It has been a long time since I've posted anything to this channel, and it's probably, I don't know if it's going to continue to be a thing that I do over here, but I have been playing a lot of World of Warcraft, and I'm thinking about rebranding this channel as a channel where I talk about, well, World of Warcraft stuff. Maybe that's something that y'all are interested in. If so, cool. If not, then, I mean, I'm going to be working on it regardless because it's a thing that I enjoy and I feel very passionately about. That said, I'm playing on the hardcore server right now, and I have something that I want to kind of rant about a little bit, and it's this idea of Classic Plus. Now, if you have been playing World of Warcraft for any amount of time, you know what that means. But if you've not heard about it before, well, let me give you an idea. So right now I'm playing on the Classic server. This is World of Warcraft asterisk as it existed back in 2004 with the latest patch that, brought us into the final patch time of World of Warcraft Classic before it got the Burning Crusade expansion. So it is a snapshot of a very specific time of World of Warcraft's history. Now, why does this exist? And then that'll maybe let you understand why Classic Plus is a conversation piece. This exists because players have been either curious about a version of WoW they haven't been able to play before because a lot of people did not grow up playing World of Warcraft or just started a lot later in the game, and so they never got to experience old Azeroth. And like with any video game, being able to explore the history of that game franchise is really cool. Now, while you can play Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, you can find versions of those games out in the wild, you could not play World of Warcraft as it once existed. So people started making private servers, and private servers were a way to experience this game, but you were kind of breaking terms of service in order to play it, because you were playing a version of the game that was not sponsored by Blizzard officially, and their TOS did say that, if you were playing on any of those servers, then they could terminate your account. So a battle basically was waged between the fans of the game and Blizzard over whether or not we would get a Classic server. And eventually, they did release Classic World of Warcraft, but Classic had problems. It doesn't have a lot of longevity. It's an MMO, and MMOs, by their nature, have an end point. Either in RuneScape, you've hit 99 in all of your skills, and now the only thing you have left is to do random PvP things. World of Warcraft, it was, did you get best in slot in all of your areas of your character? Once your character is maxed out, your only real options are to go again and make a new character, or just be done. Have everything concluded for yourself. And if I'm being honest, most people would actually burn out of the game because they'd be experiencing the same content over and over again by the time they got one or two characters maxed out, maybe even before that point. So as a result, this game would be a fun time capsule for some people, but then they would not be able to play much more with it. And because it's an MMO, you run into a major problem. If you have a time capsule MMO like this, and players want the ability to play it the way it was originally designed, originally intended, part of that is having a community of people around you. And if the community of people is hemorrhaging because everybody has recognized, oh, there's not going to be more content for this game, there's not going to be a whole lot to do in it after I've completed whatever my arbitrary goal is, you get not many people coming in, but a lot of people leaving, and that eventually leads to a dead server or a dead game. So how do you fix this? Well, the first lazy way that Blizzard went is to release expansions for the game. Release expansions for World of Warcraft just like you did before. Now, this comes with a couple problems. The reason people wanted to play Classic was because they wanted the game as it originally existed so that they could see it as a time capsule of itself. If you modify that time capsule, eventually you no longer have that game. So right now, Classic, there's Classic Mist of Pandaria, where the game is currently there, and then the next expansion, Warlords of Draenor, will be coming in here in a year or so, and World of Warcraft Classic will be slowly advancing up to, well, where World of Warcraft is now anyway. There's also Classic WoW as a separate server that is just WoW as it exists. And then there's this server, which is Hardcore Classic WoW, where if your character dies, they get deleted and you have to go again. Now, I want to focus on Hardcore for a second. Hardcore kind of sort of solves one of the problems of Classic. You see, if you are a person who has a goal you want to get to, there is an old gaming design philosophy that used to exist back with the NES that says that you can have a shorter game, but you can elongate the time players are in that game by making the game ball-bustingly hard. Now, World of Warcraft is a game that routinely does not punish death. You lose some durability, you spend some gold, and suddenly you're back up and running and everything's fine. Hardcore, deleting your character when you die, means that there is always going to be, for most people, more to do. They might be able to hit 60, but they might not be able to actually get far enough in the game at level 60 to do anything of worse before their character dies to some random mechanic they weren't expecting. I have a couple friends who keep on getting characters to around level 10 and they keep dying there, so they are in this like time loop of playing the early parts of the game over and over again. But already that's more gameplay than they would have been getting from regular World of Warcraft in those areas. They're now spending more time in Elwyn Forest, in Dunmorrow, in Teldrassil. They're spending more time in just these starting areas than they normally would because they're having to go back to them over and over again. They're learning more about the game. They're becoming damn near experts at the level 1 to 20 range, and that's going to keep on expanding for those players as they play more. You're going to end up investing far more time into the game because getting to the end is not just a matter of grinding until you're there, it's grinding and surviving, dying and resetting and going again. But there's a problem with Hardcore. It is still World of Warcraft Classic. It is still that game. It is still that game's bones. Which means that if you are not a fan of that game anymore, if you are burned out on that game, for some people, the Hardcore Challenge isn't going to fix that for you. It's not going to suddenly make that game infinitely more enjoyable for you in a way that it wasn't if the base game, playing the base game as it was with no new content, isn't appealing to you in the slightest. Like, this is just a super hard mode version of the game, but it's still the same game. This is where another server called Season of Discovery comes in. Now, Season of Discovery is World of Warcraft Classic. It is this game, like from top to bottom. It is. But it's got a little more going for it than just that. It modifies the game heavily. Now, there are ways that it modified the game heavily that were not great, that I could maybe talk about in another video, if you maybe want me to do a follow-up where I go, like, the ways that SOD failed versus the ways it succeeded. We can talk about that. But Season of Discovery, that version of Classic WoW, gave us World of Warcraft with a couple new dungeons. It converted old dungeons into raids, and it modified raids in a way that were really unique. So, like, if you've done level 60 content in World of Warcraft, you know about Onyxia. The Onyxia fight was given a extra dragon in it to change the way that the fight had to be handled a little bit. There were secrets added in to every crevice of the world for you to get runes and for you to get, like, a sleeping bag that would increase your experience points, and the runes that you could find out in the world would give you access to new abilities that your character would have that would change the way that they played. This would do things like, say, if you were a mage, it would give you the ability to start healing on a mage, which is something a mage cannot normally do. For a hunter, it would give you the ability to actually fight at melee range very well, which is something hunters classically could not do very well at all. These runes changed up the way you played the game so much that not only were you experiencing secrets out in the world, you were finding new content out in the world, you were doing raid versions of dungeons that was wildly different than what you were expecting, but the way you played your classes was so fundamentally different, you might as well have been playing a whole different fucking game with the same skin. And it was wild for that. I enjoyed my time in Season of Discovery a ton. Again, I can do a separate video on where it went wrong, But Season of Discovery was so close to what I wanted a Classic Plus to be that I was so sad when they said that, or when Blizzard said that we would no longer be getting updates to Season of Discovery, because that hemorrhaged everybody out of the game immediately. The whole point of Season of Discovery was to discover new things. And once new things were no longer introduced, the game died faster than Classic WoW does normally when people all get to max level and do their thing. Season of Discovery also had like accelerated leveling and all kinds of stuff, so the time that people spent to get to max level and experience all the content was also greatly reduced. This brings me to Classic Plus. I want Classic Plus to learn lessons from Season of Discovery. I want it to learn how to experiment with classes. Give us Melee Hunter, give us Tanking Rogue, give us Healing Mage, give us these weird, wacky things. I want Classic Plus to do that. I also want Classic Plus to do something else Season of Discovery did really well, and that was balance the classes. Now, Classic WoW is not a balanced game. Fury Warrior outdamages everything on the planet. Hunter has a damage cap that it simply cannot circumvent no matter what. Pets don't scale with you. Warlocks don't have a rotation. There's all kinds of problems with how classic World of Warcraft operates. And many people love that. Many people think that's one of the best things about the game. I think it is a fun novelty that could be improved on with some better game balance. Sod did that. I want Classic to do that as well. I want my classes to feel like no matter what path I go down for the class, I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to enjoy what I'm doing. And I feel like Sod did a very good job of that. But I also want a couple of things from Classic Plus that I think Sod kind of pioneered, but I want to see expanded. So for one, right now, if I wanted to do a dungeon, I'm level 17, I'm in hardcore, I should not do a dungeon right now, I should wait till 18, but I can at least see them on the group browser. I can see that I've got Dead Mines and Wailing Caverns available to me. This is the starting dungeon for the Alliance and the second dungeon for the Horde, respectively. I could choose to do either of these dungeons, and that would be really fun, but what if, for every 10 levels, there was an additional dungeon that was added in? This was experimented in Season of Discovery when we got Demonfall Cavern. Demonfall Cavern was a wonderful new dungeon that I thought just showcased some of the best dungeon design Blizzard has done in a while, without actually undermining what classic World of Warcraft is. It felt like an old school World of Warcraft dungeon with a couple of extra mechanics added on. I want to see a few more of those dungeons, and I want players to be able to experience those while leveling up. A thing that Sod did that I did not like was introducing the Emerald Nightmare as a way to quickly level up through your levels to get to max level quicker. Instead of having these Emerald Nightmare zones to catch people up to the level that they are supposed to get to faster, maybe instead have these extra dungeons. Spend that design time on dungeons, stuff that makes people play with one another, stuff that forces the MMORPG to continue to be an MMO RPG, a massively multiplayer game as opposed to a single player game with people around you. That's what I want. On that note, I want level 60 content to be expanded quite a bit. I want leveling content expanded. I do. But I want level 60 content expanded in the same way. Sod did this as well. Sod gave us endgame dungeons and raids that didn't exist in the game previously. We, of course, got modifications on dungeons and raids. We got modifications on raids specifically. Sorry. The mods on raids were that you could choose difficulty levels for the raid, and you could get more loot for your raid if you were doing higher difficulty levels. That's a simplification of how Sod did it, but I want to see more of that. I want to see raid tier difficulties, but I also want to see dungeon difficulties in Sod. We're not in Sod, but in Classic Plus. I did so much Strathlome and BRD. You know how much better it would be if I could choose a harder version of those dungeons for me and my friends to do? I know that retail WoW does something similar to this with the mythic keys, where you get modifiers and increased stats on all of the enemies that you're fighting, and then you get better gear to compensate for it. I don't know if I want the same infinitely scaling dungeons like mythics are, because I know players get burnt out on that really easily. Maybe I want something where, like, there's 5 tiers of difficulty, and at the highest insane tier, it is stupidly hard to actually, like, complete the dungeon. I'd like a lot of the gear in the dungeon to stay somewhat similar. I don't want gear to become... God, this is one of the problems with World of Warcraft in general. I don't want it to become a thing where you get gear that makes it easier for you to go through and therefore you're fine. There's a lesson from old school RuneScape that I want World of Warcraft to handle, and that is that once you get to the end game, once you get to level 60, I want the game to go full horizontal. Instead of all progression being vertical, where everybody is just leveling up their numbers and doing better, I want people to get better with their skills, get better with their classes, learn new and unique ways to operate that will cause them to perform better without simply having better numbers to run over content. That's what I would like to see. So I want these extra difficulties for dungeons, but I don't necessarily want infinitely scaling gear to go alongside it, because I feel like that kind of undermines what Classic was in general. That said, there is one other thing, speaking of gear, that I really want Classic Plus to do. Well, 2 other things, but the gear is the one I want to focus on. I really want Classic Plus to re-itemize gear. Now, this is something that Burning Crusade does for classic gear, and SOD did for classic gear. A lot of gear in the game got re-itemized so that you would be able to use gear that either was previously like best in slot for those points of time in the game, or were previously garbage, and made those pieces of gear better, more desirable, etc., or just itemized better. Let's see here. I need to tell this guy, nope. I need Messenger. So the way that gear was made in classic World of Warcraft is the gear designer was told that all classes were going to use all stats. And this famously led to, like, cloth gear with plus strength and agi on it for no goddamn reason. Plate gear that had, like, a massive amount of spirit and agi for the nobody who uses that exact combination. Weird stuff like that would happen, and I want weird stuff like that to stay in the game, but I want gear to be itemized a little better so that when you have that weird stuff, it is both weird and useful, not just weird. So yeah, maybe you get a spirit agi piece of gear, but you also have, like, a set bonus that it might be in where that spirit can be used for other things, like spirit regenerates rage for warriors or some shit that makes those things more desirable. It's an RPG. You can build up to the nines. You can just see the sky's the limit when it comes to gear, but I want to see gear re-itemized a little bit so that gear is fun, unique, and desirable at all stages of the game. Mostly because if you're going to be introducing new dungeons, you're always going to be introducing new gear, and that new gear is going to be itemized by people who know what they're doing now. And so older gear that is good because it's the best we have available, but it's not great in terms of how the gear could be itemized, I don't want that old gear to suddenly become not desirable because a new dungeon has made all of that content irrelevant. I don't want that. I want older dungeons to still have that good gear. For those older dungeons, maybe I want some extra mechanics as well, but for that, I think I'd like at level 60 for there to be a heroic version of all dungeons, where you can play, say, Dead Mines, the dungeon that I'm right next to. You can go through the Dead Mines as a level 60, and there will be a level 60 version of Dead Mines for you to go through. I would certainly like something like that. I think that would be fun. They did it in Cataclysm, so it's not a new thing for Blizzard to do. But there's one final thing that I want. Over and above, not over and above gear and itemization and giving us access to new dungeon content. I want new classes and races in Classic Plus. Now, these can be old classes and races. Sure, it can be the Draenei and the Worgen and the Dragonkin from, you know, the expansion with dragons. You can have those. I don't care if they are new races that I've never seen before. I just want there to be some other experiences in the game that are available to players somehow. And I also want other classes available to players. I think shamans should be available in Classic for your groups that want to have shamans if you're on the Alliance. And I want paladins available on the Horde. I don't know if I necessarily want like monks and death knights and evokers in the game. I don't know if we would necessarily go quite that far, but hell, maybe if Blizzard wants to reimagine the monk as a classic class, that could be interesting. Like, think about it. A classic leather-wearing tank, not unlike the Feral Druid, who is trying to operate with stagger damage that has to be healed differently than the other classes. That's an interesting design area that retail was able to use for Mists of Pandaria. Why not give us that in here? But make sure that if you have those classes in, they're not all available at launch. Let that be a thing where, like, every couple of months you introduce a new class in, because then you get your new wave of players going in. I think if Classic Plus is going to be handled well, the best way to do it is to have a bunch of content available, but make sure that it is not all the content that you have in the shotgun. Trickle the content out bit by bit so that you have a bit of a stagger between the release of Classic Plus and when you run out of content for it, so that you have room to build more content. I think Classic Plus can be an amazing experience for everybody, like SOD was, if it is willing to learn the lessons from Season of Discovery, to let people be in the world and play the game with their friends, but learn the lessons from SOD where it does not accelerate itself so much that players just don't have any time to enjoy the game specifically, or they start skipping content that otherwise could be done for them because they want to get where they need to go in the most efficient way possible. Make it a game that is still operating within the spirit of Classic as best you can, but also recognize that there are aspects of Classic that are bad and not charming. There are some aspects that are just bad, and move on from them. I don't want retail again. I don't want SOD again. But I definitely want Classic again, just with more in it. Give us this old world with new toys. I think that's all it really needs to be. Just make sure that those new toys are coming in at a rate that does not cause us to feel like everything's all on the table and then there's nothing left. Don't do that. But, that said, my name is Cirrus, and this has been just a rant video to see how this goes. If you guys enjoy, let me know. I would love to make more content like this on this channel. It's been forever since I've uploaded anything over here, and I know this is not what most of you signed up for initially when I made this channel, but I also feel like I want to get back into the groove of doing stuff over here as well. And this is a game that's been near and dear to my heart for years. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. And hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.